Judge Frank Caprio devoted his career to the law, serving for decades as Chief Judge of the Providence Municipal Court. His professional life was marked by consistency, fairness, and an emphasis on treating individuals with dignity. His approach to justice combined authority with understanding, and his work became an example of how law could be applied with compassion. His career was long, and his influence on colleagues and family remained strong until his death. His passing created an immediate challenge for his family. For them, the loss was not only the end of a respected career, but the disappearance of a father and central figure in their private lives. He was a constant presence, the individual to whom family members looked for guidance, advice, and reassurance. His role inside the household was that of both leader and stabilizer. The family's adjustment to his absence began with grief and the responsibilities that followed. One of the most affected was his son, who had been closely connected to him throughout his life. Their relationship went beyond traditional parent and child roles. It included years of guidance, mentorship, and shared experiences in both personal and professional settings. The son's reaction to the death was immediate and intense. Within hours, relatives observed that he struggled to cope with the situation. The strain on him escalated quickly. He was reported to be physically weak, unable to eat, and increasingly withdrawn. His attempts to stay involved in discussions about arrangements for his father were overshadowed by visible signs of exhaustion. By the evening after his father's death, he collapsed and was transported to a hospital. Doctors conducted initial examinations and concluded that his condition was critical. His blood pressure was extremely high, and he complained of chest pain. Cardiac tests were administered to rule out a heart attack. Physicians determined that while no immediate signs of a heart attack were present, the physical response to stress had placed him in serious danger. He was admitted for close monitoring, and his treatment began immediately. The family, already dealing with the death of Judge Caprio, now faced a second crisis. Their attention was divided between making necessary arrangements and staying informed about the son's medical condition. Medical staff advised them that the collapse was the result of extreme stress combined with existing health vulnerabilities. The sudden loss of a parent had created what doctors described as a stress-induced health emergency. Specialists explained to the family that grief can directly impact the body. Emotional trauma often raises stress hormones, disrupts cardiovascular stability, and creates risks for individuals with underlying conditions. The son's case aligned with what is sometimes referred to as stress-induced cardiomyopathy. While not always fatal, the condition requires significant medical intervention and can result in long-term consequences if not managed carefully. The son was placed under constant observation. His treatment plan included medication to stabilize blood pressure, monitoring of cardiac activity, and scheduled evaluations to assess his recovery. Doctors emphasized that while medical care could address the physical symptoms, his emotional health would be a decisive factor in determining his long-term outcome. For the family, the situation became a test of endurance. They were required to organize funeral arrangements for Judge Caprio while also preparing for the possibility of extended hospitalization for his son. Balancing these responsibilities placed additional pressure on them, and they relied on each other to manage both tasks. Conversations inside the family focused on their father's principles, his emphasis on unity, and his constant reminders that hardship could only be faced by remaining strong together. The son's relationship with Judge Caprio was central to the unfolding events. Those who knew them described it as one of deep reliance. The father provided guidance throughout his son's life, and the son expressed admiration and respect for him consistently. The sudden absence of such a figure created a vacuum that translated directly into emotional and physical instability. His hospitalization was not interpreted by relatives as an isolated medical episode, but as a direct consequence of his father's death. Doctors updated the family regularly, They reported fluctuations in his condition, noting improvements in blood pressure followed by setbacks in energy levels and cardiac rhythm. Each update was measured, and the family understood that recovery would take time. Physicians advised that stress management and counseling would be necessary once his physical state stabilized. Meanwhile, decisions regarding Judge Caprio's final arrangements continued. Relatives debated how to proceed while one of their own remained in critical care. Some argued for immediate action to ensure their father was honored without delay, while others expressed concern about how this would affect the son's fragile condition. In the end, they agreed to move forward with preparations while keeping constant communication with the hospital. Medical professionals underscored the importance of family support in cases of stress-induced health events. They encouraged relatives to remain present, to speak with him, and to remind him of the stability that remained even in the face of loss. The family responded by organizing themselves in shifts, ensuring that someone was always available at the hospital. The dynamic within the family reflected the lessons they had received from Judge Caprio himself. He had often spoken about resilience and the importance of meeting adversity with composure. Those principles now became more than advice. They became strategies for survival. Family members repeated his words in private conversations, reminding themselves that his guidance did not end with his death, but continued through the example he had set. The medical situation was used by physicians as an example of how grief can manifest beyond the emotional level. They explained that the death of a parent, particularly one who played a dominant role in a child's life, can trigger not only sadness, but also physical breakdown. This case highlighted the need to consider both mental and physical health during periods of bereavement. The family continued to balance dual responsibilities. On one side was the need to honor Judge Caprio with appropriate dignity. On the other was the urgent necessity of supporting his son through hospitalization. Relatives acknowledged that both tasks were connected. Honoring their father meant carrying forward his values, and supporting his son was one of those values in action. As time progressed, updates from the hospital indicated gradual stabilization. The son's blood pressure lowered to safer levels, and his cardiac rhythm normalized. However, doctors warned against assuming full recovery. They stressed that relapses are possible when emotional stress remains unresolved. Long-term care would involve counseling, ongoing medical supervision, and close family involvement. The family recognized that the immediate crisis had not yet passed. They adjusted their schedules, dividing time between the hospital and the arrangements for Judge Caprio's funeral. The work was exhausting, but they considered it an obligation not only to their father, but to one another. Each member of the family contributed, reflecting the unity their father had always demanded of them. In the weeks that followed, the narrative of Judge Caprio's death became inseparable from the story of his son's hospitalization. The two events formed one sequence, illustrating how the loss of one life can directly impact another. The medical crisis underscored the depth of the father-son relationship and the vulnerability created by the sudden absence of a guiding figure. The conclusion reached by those close to the family was clear. Judge Caprio's death represented not only the end of a judicial career, but the beginning of a series of personal challenges for those he left behind. His son's hospitalization demonstrated the severity of those challenges in immediate and physical terms. The responsibility of the family moving forward was twofold: to preserve the legacy of Judge Frank Caprio and to ensure the health and recovery of his son. Both tasks would require strength, patience, and a commitment to the values that had guided them throughout their lives. Judge Frank Caprio's story did not end with his passing. It continued in the experiences of his family, in their struggle to manage grief, and in the physical consequences that grief produced. His son's collapse was a reminder of the fragility of human resilience when tested by loss. It was also a demonstration of the deep bond between father and son, a bond strong, enough to affect both heart and body. The Caprio family's immediate future would be shaped by these events. Their ability to endure would depend on the very principles their father had emphasized throughout his life: unity, strength, and compassion. His death marked the end of his direct presence, but his influence persisted in the way his family confronted their greatest challenges. Judge Frank Caprio lived a life defined by service and compassion. His death marked a turning point for his family, creating both grief and crisis. The hospitalization of his son illustrated the direct connection between emotional trauma and physical health. The family faced the combined task of honoring their father's memory and supporting his son's recovery. Both responsibilities reflected the enduring influence of a man whose lessons remained relevant even after his passing.